Well, we're back for another Things Hidden podcast, and I'm joined by my friend, the editor of brightnews.com, Shannon Braswell. How you doing?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
You keeping warm over there in Seattle?
I'm trying to. Yeah, got the vest on, the hat.
Well, I think it's going to be an exciting time for this Christmas season because we are once again every year we think we're closer to the end of the world, but I guess this year we really it's in the season, right?
I, I, you
It's
know,
baked into the atmosphere of the vibe.
yeah. I mean, this is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be like that around this season, right? It's supposed to
Yeah.
be a time of joy and you know, uh, happiness and jolly, and everything like that. But you know, it's been colored by a lot of
You're not allowed to say that word
apocalyptic
anymore.
scenarios.
You can't say that
Oh,
word anymore.
I guess I can't say colored. Okay, it's been painted, overshadowed by a lot of apocalyptic, potentially apocalyptic scenarios,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So we shall see, but we keep the faith, man. You know, stay
yeah.
happy.
Recently, you sent me a clip of a Catholic priest, right? That said something
Mhm.
about how he spiritually visited the Antichrist. I don't know what does that mean. He got a teleportation, or he went to
Yeah.
a cocktail party, or
So yeah, that's funny that you brought that up because that video um was taken at my local parish, and he's a sort of a he's a priest that kind of goes around different places and preaches and evangelizes,
yeah,
and I also think he works um in the area of exorcism,
yeah,
right? But he had given like a um and I'm not big on this kind of stuff, but you know I believe it. um but he was given a eulogy, or a talk after mass about how he had encountered the Antichrist, and he said, and he's alive today.
yeah,
um, or something to that effect, like, you know you'd know him if you see him or something like that. And so, yeah, it was a very interesting and sort of you know very I don't even know how to describe it, man, because I never encountered anything like that going to church before. Um, so yeah, it was definitely sort of, what's the word I should use? It sort of, I was taken aback by it. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't expecting to hear that during the during the Lenten season.
that's not what
You
you
know,
usually hear at a Catholic sermon, do you?
yeah, it's not what you hear
They don't usually talk
usually.
about I visited the Antichrist today, right?
Or I was visited by the Antichrist. Yeah, that's
He
yeah,
said that when he was talking to him, two little horns came up, didn't he?
yeah. He said he two little horns, and he's
Which
done.
I
He's
don't
done.
get. I don't understand because a lot of Catholics say, look, Satan is a real force, but he's
Mhm,
not that caricature of the red little man with horns. But then
mhm,
you hear guys like that and they say little
mhm,
horns pop up. You're like, which one is it? Was that
mhm.
a cartoon that was
Yeah.
created by medieval ideas, or is that something based in
Mhm.
reality? What's going on?
Yeah, yeah, and just for clarity, I want to make sure that we get his name so it doesn't sound like, we don't sounds like I'm just making stuff up. But it is, yeah. I mean, it's not something you usually hear at a Catholic sermon. You know what I mean? Regardless of if it's the Lenten season, or you know, um, or anything like that. But when you hear it, um, it's his name is Father Jim. Father Jim.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when you hear stuff like that, it usually here in the West, like especially with the Catholic Church, we're always speaking about, especially if you're on the sort of the, I guess, trad Catholic side, a lot of times you hear about, what the government is doing, or what the Holy See is doing to sort of undermine or subvert,
Yeah.
the teachings of the church, right? So usually when you hear something about spiritual warfare or the demonic, you know, it it's sort of, yeah, like surreal, like, man, is this really happening? And yeah, you hear about the horns and stuff like that. And um, for me, I was standing there, I was in the back. So I was standing there and I said, uh, like the servant, he said, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief, you know, because if anything like that should arise, which, Father Jim says it, it is real, then, I would hope that, uh, members within the church, whether they be laypersons or, um, a part of the ecclesiastical body, would have enough faith to believe that, God can help us to overcome,
Yeah.
all of that,
Yeah.
right? Um, so that is certainly a troubling, troubling thing to experience. But he's a great, great priest, and he's um, I'm sure that they have priests like him and Father Rippinger. They have the wherewithal to deal with that.
It seems like the only priests that get any traction in the online world for Catholics are the exorcists lately,
Yeah,
Like even
yeah,
Ripperger, he can't talk about marriage without somehow talking about the devil made you do it. So
yeah, yeah, and
he
and and
talks
I and
about
I
how
and
he talks about how he says I beat up intelligent life for a living every day because he beats up demons and stuff. I don't
yeah,
know. To me, I don't know. I'll just say this. I think if you're really battling that stuff, you probably shouldn't mock them in that way. They probably got something up their sleeve if you're going to talk like that. That's just me, but
yeah,
maybe the Masons made me say that because I know his guy,
yeah, yeah.
the
I
guy,
mean,
the guy, he had a guy. I
yeah,
don't want to speak ill, but I had one of
mm,
his guys on that was his right hand man in his ministry to learn more, and he
mm,
kept blaming everything on the Masons. So maybe Masons made me feel that way, but I think you shouldn't mock demons in that way. But maybe he
yeah,
thinks that's cool. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely think that, again, if you are a priest, uh, who is engaged with spiritual, with the demonic, and you are someone who um deals with that on a daily basis, you have to have you know you have to have strong faith, you
yeah,
know and really believe, I think, in the power of Christ, right?
yeah,
So it's not sort of something to take lightly, right?
yeah,
And then, here's the other thing. What's interesting a lot of times is that they will say, first is sort of, tapping into a lot of that stuff. So whether you're using, you know, whether it's games like the Ouija boards, or, certain literature, um, or engaging in certain behaviors, or, you're doing things habitually that just kind of bring that out, or might summon those type of things. You know, that is how a lot of times people get you know it, they encounter, those kind of spirits, right? It's because they're engaging in some kind of activity that sort of leads them in that direction. And I would say the same thing, could probably be said for uh, being a member of somebody like the like Masonic lodges and stuff like that, right? a lot of this on this hidden knowledge and things like that that you may not be aware of, how those things can really open up a lot of doors to that, right? So for me, I always say, man, I'll listen to them about something, that I might have a question about, but I'm not gonna go digging too hard into, uh, or think too much about those kind of those kind of um, those kind of things, right? Because even then that, right, it's like you start getting interested in it, and you're like, man, I want to know what demon this is. Is this Beelzebub? And is this, I don't know, whatever. So for me, I just like, hey man, my focus is on Christ. I want to listen to Christ. I want to follow Christ, right? Um, and I'll leave that to the clergy, um, to to be aware of and concerned about. Uh, yeah, that's what I think about that. You know.
When that guy said that thing, and he said that the Antichrist, what was the stuff he talked about? The abortion is a sacrifice for
Mm-hmm.
this evil stuff, and
Yeah, and he's talking about the
gender
kids.
confusion is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense that the sexual thing is going to be a big focus of evil forces, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where humans are able to exist, is if they
Mm-hmm.
procreate healthily and healthily raise families and children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the way to really nuke human species at the start,
Yeah.
is to go after destroying that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that there's still wherever I go in the Christian circles that you go to,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Protestant churches, Catholic, Orthodox, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you just see such a lack of belief
Mm-hmm.
in the future of Earth, and a lack of belief in the ability of this country to go forward in a better place one day,
Mm-hmm.
and a lack of belief in the body, which I think all three of those things are connected. If you don't believe that your nation is worth nothing, it's not going to get anywhere better.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it that way. Conservatives idolize America oftentimes and say it's the greatest thing in the sliced bread, and it could be, but they don't believe America's going in the right direction.
Right.
And neither does the left.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't think there's good days ahead for America.
Mm-hmm.
Most people in the culture don't believe that. Most people don't believe in the strength of the human body to overcome and defeat through knowledge and through exercise, nutrition, and discovery of non-toxic therapies to defeat all the big diseases of civilization.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody believes in the future of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody believes that their job is to be, holy and pious, and just kind of retreat from the world and try to save face. But I think that's the opposite approach to where most Christians are called to be. Maybe there's a place for the ascetics to do that, like the monks or whatever. But I think that something I think you share with me is a different kind of Christianity that cuts through all of this and animates things to say, hey, no, actually I'm bullish on the earth, and I'm bullish on the body, and I'm bullish on even this country in the long term going in a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that we're in a sort of culture of despair. You know what I'm saying? A culture of sort of, um, there's nothing we can do, so we might as well just pray and wait for, you know, the end of days sort of mentality. All hell's about to break loose. So, might as well just sort of, let
Brace yourself. Yeah.
yeah, brace yourself. Get ready for the fire for the fiery flood, you know. And I mean, it's not like Americans haven't heard that before. I remember when, we were growing up, you would hear that a lot, like, this is the end of days, get ready, Jesus is coming back, you better get your house in order, you know what I mean? And it was always with the sense of like things are turning for the worse, you know. And um, you know, it may be the case that things have to go sort of downhill before we reach a point to where we realize, hey, this is not where we're supposed to be. This is not the state we're supposed to be in,
Right.
from an economic standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, from mental health, right? You know, from a spiritual standpoint, you know. Um,
But this is all about, I know we're kind of talking about different topics, but they're all kind of connected here. A
yeah.
lot of this is about what it feels like to be in a culture of undifferentiation, increasing undifferentiation.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a
Yeah.
lot about the scapegoat mechanism on this podcast because that is something that is a thing hidden since the foundation of the world. Because
Mm-hmm.
so many cultures, it seems like virtually all cultures were mediated by something like that at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and we still have traces of that scapegoat expulsion in us today. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that the other part of the scapegoat mechanism was that it was staving off undifferentiation,
Right.
and today it seems like the biggest podcasts that are successful are programs that are increasingly honing in on trying to recover differentiation between
Mm-hmm.
one another, whether it's Black identity podcasts that
Mm-hmm.
emphasize the community or whatever,
Yeah.
the culture as they try to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For their terms.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's these programs, these podcasts where they bring on, like in the red pill community, which is all about the gender differences and men and
Mm-hmm.
women's relationships
Mm-hmm.
and the way in which that has been misled and distorted and destroyed and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
there's all these programs that are very popular where they bring on a group of girls from, um, you know, OnlyFans or whatever to
Mm-hmm.
interact with conservative traditionalists, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
see their worldviews clash and see what happens with that. And
Mm-hmm.
all of that is a hunger for differentiation, right? For
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
seems to me that's what animates so much of the madness of our time. You think about relationships and
Mm-hmm.
dating and marriage, for example, so much of the conflict is about undifferentiation. It's about
Mm-hmm.
who's in charge of what,
Yeah.
you know, what is the way of a woman, what is the way of a man in terms of their mannerisms, even
Mm-hmm.
the discourse. Used to be that a woman would never, ever consider it to be high value to ever say a swear word, in
Mm-hmm.
public. And it
Mm-hmm.
was for a man too, but there was even greater importance on a woman not using the filth language of man that was considered kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
crass.
Right.
And yet today, that's another state of undifferentiation, right? So
Yeah.
every little part of our lives increasingly are becoming undifferentiated. And girls are growing up to believe they have to mimic a man in terms of creating their whole mind about what career am I going to have,
Mm-hmm.
and then this culture has become, because of the, for whatever reason, the trend there, a very emasculated culture, a very female dominated cultural perception of the world,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is, not really interested in risky excellence, but rather making sure everyone gets an equal sized cookie to feel
Mm-hmm.
good and not to be feel
Mm-hmm.
left out, which is just really going to, that's undifferentiation too. If everybody's got
Yeah.
an equally shaped and sized cookie in their life,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody's doing anything different or great or bold or
Mm-hmm.
risky, you have nothing to keep the lights on at some point, right? You're
Right.
not going to have minors. You're not going to have people that go and do plumbing. You're not going to have people making
Yeah.
nuclear energy, all those types of things. That those knowledge set, they're going to become more and more
Yeah.
retarded because everybody's got a cookie, and that's all they're striving for is their equal share of a
Right.
cookie.
But you know that's a true. I think that's a true analysis of the culture we live in right now, right? Where uh if even okay, like even if you talk about undifferentiation, like everybody, you're trying to mold everybody into being the same and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Eventually though, that undifferentiation is going to turn into people wanting to pull away and be different,
Right.
right? And so
Right.
what does that look like? That
Right.
that also is a violent experience, right?
Right.
Because it's like, well, uh women want to be treated like men, and then men want to look like women,
Yeah.
right? So then you got this mold of a mess, but then what happens, what happened with that, right? And we're seeing it actually take place
Mm-hmm.
right before our eyes, because if you notice, before, women were saying, well, yes, we believe that, if my child feels like he's a woman and he wants to be a woman, and if and if my my brother wants to feel like he's a woman and everything, he should be allowed to be a woman, damn it,
Right.
and and so then what eventually happened? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, you had a lot of sports players, like
Yeah.
female sports players, saying, you know what, this is not right, right?
Right.
You had a lot of female commentators starting to say, you know what, this is not right. You're not a woman, right?
Right.
Who was the writer of Harry Potter?
Right.
Speaking of potentially being demonic and stuff like that. I don't, I won't make any comments on that, but the writer of Harry Potter, what did she say? She said, you know, um, you know, a man is not a woman. And what did they do to her? Immediately they came after her and started talking,
That,
negatively about her, trying to talk
but that's the
down.
liberating thing about that, man, is that like when you see that you can be a servant of the politically correct culture in Hollywood, and
Hmm.
her books, I've never read them, but I've seen some of the movies. They promote
Hmm.
the same old, like
Hmm.
liberal style, neoliberal style worldview about
Hmm.
follow your heart, and it
Hmm.
promotes feminism and
Hmm.
homosexuality and all that kind of thing. So like
Hmm.
if she can be a servant of those values and still
Hmm.
get canceled because you don't go to the next degree, it liberates you to just be yourself and don't care.
Right.
Just be
But it,
yourself. Say what's true about everything that is
yeah,
relevant for your public voice,
right,
and don't worry about hedging, because it doesn't matter how loyal you are to the speech codes.
right.
You're never
And
gonna
and and, and
you're
it's
never
and
gonna
it's a
be
perfect,
perfect about everything, and they will
yeah.
find a reason to destroy you for that reason.
Yeah, and it's a part of, I remember when we first started talking to each other, and I had mentioned to you about that story in Violence in the Sacred, where there was a god, I think from South America. I don't remember if he was Mayan or Aztec, but he was from one of the, you know, um,
Yeah,
greater known empires, right?
yeah,
Who had who believed in sort of consuming, the flesh,
yeah,
like he would tear the flesh off or something like that. I don't remember the story. It was such a long time ago, but still, that image is still in my mind, where he had to sort of amalgamate everybody into his being,
yeah,
right? And if you were sort of outside of that, then obviously you were considering yourself to be different,
yeah,
and that wasn't going to work for that God. So
yeah,
you had to be sacrificed. You know what I mean? And amalgamated it to who he was, right? And so that's sort of, that's exactly what is playing out right now. It's like
yeah,
you you trying to be different. No, that doesn't work, right? And it's sort of one of those things where, um, you say the left will eat its own. I think I hear that phrase, come across a couple times. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing, is that as
yeah,
soon as you are not willing to go the extra mile to say, hey, I believe in that too, uh, then you're going to get scapegoated, right? Uh,
yeah.
so um,
Well, it's the
it
it's the it's the chaos of undifferentiated rivalry that we need to
yeah,
be more alarmed about in this era than scapegoating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Scapegoating is going to happen, to some degree, but because of
Mm-hmm.
it exponentially losing its effect, the more it's done,
Mm-hmm.
it's increasing the breakdown of the other Satan part of,
Mm-hmm.
when Gerard talks about how can Satan cast out Satan, he's talking about the human part of this concept, not the metaphysical concept. And he's saying
Mm-hmm.
that, Satan is chaos and Satan
Mm-hmm.
is order, and
Mm-hmm.
order can be established through the
Through
chaos as
chaos.
its
Yeah.
energy that it kind of feeds off of and channels.
Mm-hmm.
But once you destroy that secondary part of Satan, casting out
Mm-hmm.
Satan,
Mm-hmm.
you're just stuck with the first Satan, the
Mm-hmm.
operative, which is undifferentiation and rivalry, undifferentiated rivalry, where people's love grows cold, right? And
Mm-hmm.
their cynicism is
Mm-hmm.
deeply entrenched. I can't. It seems like that's what Gen Z, particularly signals. There's a lot of cynicism and boredom
Mm-hmm.
and listlessness amongst that generation. Like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like you know, it, the about having passion or charisma
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or uniqueness on some level. It seems like everything's just kind of a derivative thing for them. That's
Yeah.
oh, that's it. Um, it's just everything's overplayed. I've seen that before. That's not cool.
Right.
Everything's a
They're
meme.
very
Nothing.
sarcastic.
Yeah, nothing means anything
Yeah.
anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything's meaningless. And I think
Yeah.
everything is meaningless when you don't. Uh, when you don't have a world that understands the mechanisms of human nature and why, the New Testament in particular helps you see those mechanisms so that you can learn to uh, have a healthier life, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not just about the scapegoat mechanism, it's
Mm-hmm.
about the mechanisms of mimetic rivalry. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
have a relationship in which gender boundaries are not clearly delineated about
Mm-hmm.
who's doing what and why and whose
Mm-hmm.
mannerisms are what, and
Mm-hmm.
who has the who's the energy, who's the one setting the schedule, who's the one driving the family forward. If it's a tug of war constantly,
Mm-hmm.
that derails children's belief in meaning, and
Mm-hmm.
it derails family formations down the road, and
Mm-hmm.
it derails order, and it derails excellence,
Mm-hmm.
and it derails you know innovation, because innovation
Mm-hmm.
happens in the context of an orderly society that can make space for something different, right, without
Mm-hmm.
freaking out about it and trying to kill them.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Which is probably the reason why we now turn to the belief that there are extraterrestrials out there and
yeah,
aliens, right?
right.
Because we have to believe in something that is
Yeah,
so,
that's an interesting topic too. Yeah,
yeah, it's like everything on
talk
earth is
about that old
born.
gray community
Yeah.
when they're gray privileged.
Right.
I pushed that
You know,
gray privilege concept with an article years ago. And that's
yeah.
when I mean, really, that's when you started to realize how cynical and meaning and nihilistic our culture is.
Hmm.
Because I was making a point about the privilege. Anybody who's got UFOs that hasn't shared that with us has definitely got some gray privilege if the gray aliens have that stuff. And I put that out there and it got some traction here and there, but I was like, maybe the joke, the point of it, most people, I realized later, it's like most people probably are not aware of the like alien concept of a gray alien. That's kind of like
Hmm.
something, but I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not that's not really what we're motivated by. Is these
Yeah.
little kind of these little things. It's you look at
Right.
the alien stuff, and like you said, it's an example of people who are they're afraid of real of looking in the mirror and realizing that they're not going to have any real progress
Hmm.
in and of ourselves. It's going to have
Hmm.
to be dropped down from somebody special outside of
Hmm.
us, right?
Hmm.
Is that the
Hmm.
idea?
Yeah,
What do
that's
you
my
think?
point.
Yeah,
Yeah, that there's got to be something. more invigorating and more that's going to keep my focus or keep me you know interested than just this. But that is that I think that simply boils down to our culture being sort of just very stale and dry. I mean,
Right.
most of what you see on television, which I think most people sort of just tapped out of television anyways, is the same stuff they've been playing since maybe we were in high school or college. It's drama. It's you know um, you know uh, it's drama, it's drugs, it's you know political drama.
Yeah.
It's the same networks talking about the same thing. You know, um, and so I think Gen Z has a right to be cynical about that, right? Because they feel, like, well, man, I don't have anything to really. I don't. There's nothing for me to do. There's nothing for me to really engage in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not that they don't have anything to engage in, but it's when you're constantly fed the same thing all the time, and you got the algorithms and everything sort of pointing you in a particular direction, right? How likely is it that you're going to come upon some talk or some conversation or some documentary that's giving you a different way to think, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or a book that's out there that's sort of like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting. I never thought about it like that. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
never thought about it this way. Um, so I understand the sort of despair and the cynicism and the sarcasm and you know they come out of college and they're not able to find a job. They were told that if you go to school, you get a good education, you'll be able to have a working career, and that's exactly the opposite of what happened. You come out of college and then you have more debt.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a little upset about that because now you don't have a job, right? You're probably always gonna remain in debt because you don't have a job. You know, um, so yeah, and then two, the other thing here is that that's sort of what is the church doing, right? They're not really adding much to the conversation in terms of giving young people options, or
Yeah.
to look at things in a different way. So there's going to be cynicism towards that too.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? You go to, like, for me, you go to mass every Sunday or whatever, a couple times a week, and all you hear is baby boomers playing on banjos, like they're in some kind
Yeah.
of a, like summer camp,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna kind of be a little like, okay, you know what I mean? It's not really what I was looking for, but
Yeah.
okay. You know what I mean? Like I'm still in the house of the Lord. Okay, whatever. That's a step. That's a step. But I wish they would stop playing that dang acoustic guitar and singing these, really just, 1970s, peace and love songs. I mean, yeah, we want peace and love, but you get what I'm saying. It's dry, it's
Yeah.
stale, you know. So
What do you think people are getting when they go to those churches? What's the experience you're getting when you go there? Are you just in and out? Or are you hanging out with the community? And do other people your age uh, ex- demonstrate signs of frustration with that type of worship experience?
I I think there are some young people who enjoy being in the service of the church, right? Like volunteering and actually
Yeah.
working in the in the diocese and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think for that reason they engage with it because they really believe in the church. They believe in the
Yeah.
mission of the church, right? They believe in the fact of serving. their fellow man. So they really want to be a part of that, right? Whether or not they believe in sort of the aesthetics of it, right? This sort of Norvis Ordo, um, 1960s, 1970s style um, mass. That's a different story, and I don't think you're going to get a lot of young people actually saying that out loud
Yeah.
because they don't want to be ostracized. You know what I mean? So they'll kind of keep it maybe hidden, right? Um, that's not to say that all young people, some of them maybe really like that. Maybe they really are just into it and they just, you know what I mean? Like they want to be
It's
part
so
of that.
funny when like the newer music is associated with the older people and the younger people are associated with the older music.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Well, but I think it's also young people. We didn't get to have the experience of going to a mass or a liturgy that was that had a otherworldly type of experience. You know what I mean? Like that was sort of the baby boomers. They had the experience, and they turned away from it, right? And so the younger generation, we're kind of like, well, we were deprived of that, and we
Yeah.
want to have that. Like we want to know what it's like to be in a place where, you know, you take off your shoes for this is holy ground experience.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We want the aesthetics, we want the incense, we
Yeah.
want the candles, we want the, the
They want a private space that doesn't look like everything else in their world.
that doesn't look like everything, we want the differentiation.
Yeah.
We want the differentiation.
Yeah.
And I think that that's true for a lot of people that go and join other
Yeah.
denominations within the church, whether it's Orthodox or
Right.
the Oriental Orthodox or what have you. It's because they're looking for an experience that seems, first of all, to be or feels very authentic,
Yeah.
you know, that feels,
Uh,
yeah,
and of course, I like to kind of rain on that a little bit because I'm always
yeah,
like, a lot of those things that look so exotic and otherworldly to us
yeah,
were seeker sensitive tools that the church borrowed from their pagan and Jewish neighbors at the time so
sure,
that they could get people into the church.
sure,
So I like to
sure,
put that in there because I just can't help this,
yeah,
self, this kind of like ethnocentricity about this ethnocentric,
yeah,
or I don't know what word is to a
yeah,
good way to describe it, but this kind of like, like, oh,
yeah,
because I've heard that from,
yeah,
uh, Orthodox and Catholic friends that go to like the traditional Latin mass. Isn't it
mhm,
great to go to a church service that doesn't feel like everything in the world? And I'm like, yeah, but that felt a lot like what those people who made those worships, that's kind of what
yeah,
their world looked like. They,
right,
the
right,
mayor of his town had a crown like your bishop does, you know what I mean? And
right,
incense was
right,
around in the
right,
in pagan services, and it was
yeah,
around in the Jewish liturgical practice, with
right,
the burning of the animal's flesh and all these
right,
different things. And
right,
uh, you know, so these are, see, I'm not saying they're just
yeah,
seeker sensitive tools for their
yeah,
time, but they
yeah, yeah,
were kind
I get
of
it,
like things that people leaned into to say,
yeah,
hey, look, this is something we're taking from another spiritual practice that
mhm,
I think you will call to mind. Like, for
mhm,
example, I'll give you an example. Like, a lot of young people are turning towards Catholicism and
mhm,
Orthodoxy that have a view of saints, right, being alive.
mhm,
These people have
mhm,
died before us, that you can communicate with them.
mhm,
And you know uh putting aside the spiritual question of whether that, of what's going on there, right? The spiritual
mhm,
question, putting that aside, just from just a purely anthropological perspective, that's scratching a social itch that the
mhm,
vast majority of humans have had prior to modernism, right?
right,
Which was, and even still with modernism, there's some of this,
mhm,
which is that most cultures came from a society that was in touch with their ancestors or
Mhm.
uh gods, right? The
Yeah.
god of the river, the god of my
Yeah.
town, the god of the
Yeah.
of anger, the god of sex, the god of
Sure.
whatever. And there
Yeah.
were gods
Ancestral
everywhere.
worship.
Right. From a
Yeah.
Girardian standpoint, those are all actual stand-ins for scapegoats or
Mhm.
sacrificial victims, or in the
Mhm.
case of your ancestor, that's just an ancestor, I guess, but it
Mhm.
still has some kind of cultic effect. Is similar to a
Mhm.
scapegoat murder. But all
Mhm.
of those gods that you're praying to are actually just like, abstractions for
Mhm.
a person who died before you,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
if your world, if your psychic space is dominated in your culture by people talking to the dead or talking to
Mhm.
those who they believe, see, it's interesting here. These folks, if you're in the primitive, in that mind of polytheistic culture, you don't
Mhm.
believe, like, unless it's ancestors,
Mhm.
I guess ancestors, you would know you're talking to the dead. But if you're
Mhm.
praying to gods, you don't think you're praying to the dead. You think you're
Mhm.
praying to someone who is alive in the world,
Yeah.
who is able to act with agency for your benefit in a
Mhm.
transaction, right?
Mhm.
So you can see the transitionary
Mhm.
between that and
Mhm.
these liturgical practices of the old church,
Mhm.
right? Where
Mhm.
you can phone call all these saints. Now,
Mhm.
Gerard, comes in, 2,000 years later and helps us
Mhm.
see something that I think the text was up to all along, which is
Mhm.
that these gods are not invented, but rather deified victims,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So if
Mhm.
somebody died, so to speak, and you're praying and you didn't know about it, and you believe Zeus is a real god that acts in the
Mhm.
world, and you're praying to Zeus and you're offering sacrifices to Zeus and
Mhm.
worship. In some sense, you are praying to the psychological, like to the reality of a dead person who
Mhm.
died before you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
because behind
Mhm.
Zeus is just a dead victim and many others after.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
praying to the dead, believing they're alive, but you don't know you're praying to the dead. You believe you're praying to a god.
Mhm.
And in the
Mhm.
same sense, like, you know, the
Mhm.
Catholic Church, the universal church that arose in that environment
Mhm.
gave people a similar psychological outlet, a human
Mhm.
and a human need for
Mhm.
talking to those who have died before you. Now, in the church's position, they are not dead; they are alive, right? They were
Mhm.
saying and
Mhm.
still say,
Mhm.
many. I guess there are some explanations differently, but you're
Mhm.
talking to the living,
Mhm.
uh, and you're talking to people who are often uh, turned in, who are called saints because of their martyrdom, having
Right.
died as sacrificial victims.
Yeah.
So you can see how saints and this stuff is, there's a perfect through line between that and
Mhm.
the world they came into. Sorry, this
Mhm.
microphone, I gotta, this keeps going down. But
Yeah.
you can see the through line there, right? That
Mhm.
they're coming from an environment where this was a normal psychological reality and apparent need that people had.
Right. Right. And I don't, uh, you know, I want to be careful so as to not sound heretical, right? But I think, it's fair to say that, the church was engaging with a world that was pagan, right?
Yeah,
But you could say the same thing about the gospels themselves, right? It's dealing with the world that is trying to struggle with its myths
right.
in the past that came before it, right? Um, I and I don't know how controversial this might sound,
It's
but
okay.
I will try it. You know, um, if when you look at the Gospels, right, and you look at the virgin birth, right, that is some might say that's in contrast, and I think Gerard kind of alluded to this before, that the 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 story of the virgin birth is in contrast to the way Zeus might, encounter a
Right.
woman or
Sure.
have some kind of relationship
Yeah.
with a woman, right? So, like for instance, Zeus turns himself into a bull,
Right.
to abduct Europa,
Yeah.
right? Uh, you know, or you have these stories about like rape or incest or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But then you look at the gospel story, within Luke, and it's the angel comes to Mary, the Blessed Mother, and says, peace be on to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't do, be not afraid. And then there's this sense of acceptance by the Blessed Mother to take on, the being the Theotokos,
Yeah.
the mother of God, the God bearer, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of an maybe if you want to say it's an inversion or a counter, it flips on his head.
Yeah.
I think that is whether you want to say it's a mythological story or not, like I think that was sort of a divine revelation in a sense, because it it made human beings have to think about how God is in a different way, that God
Yeah.
is not a violent God, that he's not a God of
Yeah. Well,
force,
they
you
really
know.
haven't got that message 2,000 years later. We're still working on that one.
Well, all you gotta do is look at some of them stories about Zeus
Yeah.
Poseidon and Hades,
But
and that'll tell you everything you need to know. And then you
But
go
you
and
know,
look at
but humans are the kind of people that they will murder someone because you painted Mary wrong, but not get the point that the story of Mary also shows the nonviolence of God. Does that make sense? Does that? Do you understand what I'm dealing with, man?
yeah,
this is what I'm dealing with on
yeah.
my program,
Well,
right?
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the
I
thing.
don't get into what my particular faith is. You can
Yeah,
people can understand what it is if they it
yeah,
seems like people figure it out, but I don't really care.
yeah.
But the
I think
I'm
there's two.
Christian, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know what
Yeah,
people's allegiances are. But go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. I think there's two. I think there's two sides to this, right? Because it's like people who are on the left and who are very or they may not even be on the left, but there are people out there who want to do the comparison of the myth,
Yeah.
as to, like, their intention is not to say the gospel, this is how profoundly different the gospels are. Their
Yeah.
intention is to make comparisons, to say
Right. Sure.
it's nothing other than just another.
But zealous traditionalists in all Christian or all religious circles, they don't like that.
Right. Well,
Just like
they'll
Gerard
do
said,
no. So they'll do the
Gerard said
exact
the fundamentalists never.
opposite,
Yeah, Gerard
right?
said the fundamentalists never wanted to compare the Gospels with myth because they were terrified about what it might reveal about the similarity.
Right.
And then
And then the other side is making it all similar because they want to make it seem like Christianity is not
yeah,
anything other than
like
another
the
myth.
Jordan Peterson type move where you just say it's just a really well distillation of the same archetypes of all religions or something.
Right. Right.
But see,
So
that
you
doesn't
have
get you anywhere because Jordan Peterson, when this is what I try to tell him in my interview, guys, go back and watch it. Maybe we'll put it in the reference. But go back and watch my interview with Jordan Peterson years ago, 2018, whatever. And I was trying, to be respectful to his paradigm. He was just ascendant at that moment. And I was trying to be a respectful person to his, his paradigm and everything. And I was trying to tell him, though, I said, you've got to understand the real world imitational, if you look at it from the anthropology, we don't have to just stay in the realm of Christ is what happens when you face the depression head on and you decide to get up out of that bed. That's the Christ in you. Like when you go there, that's fine. That's there. But then you end up making justifications for killing civilians in a conflict in the Middle East, like he's doing years later. That's the kind of Christ you get. Right. And the problem that I have is that folks who will get that. The thing I'm tired of with Christians, I got to tell you. So this is
okay. Tell me, because I want to.
Okay. So the thing that I'm tired about is that it's like no matter what you do to try to show them the nonviolence of God, they'll get it right on some things, and then they just can't let it go, and they go ape crazy back to violent rejection of Christ on another thing. So,
Mhm.
like, there were millions of people who were Christians who got, oh, wait, yeah, after Iraq war was a disaster,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe we shouldn't keep doing this stupid, horrible atrocity to people.
Mhm.
They finally got it, like years later after Bush. They're like,
Mhm.
wow, yeah. And then Trump came along, and he gave them a license to be against those types of Iraq wars because he bashed it really hard, but he still
Mhm.
sounded like a tough guy, and he still said, "Oh, I'll kick anybody's tail." So people
Mhm.
felt like I can vote for this guy and not feel like a wussy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So then go to the next step.
Mhm.
Once they get there, okay, now they're getting better. They were getting better about Syria. Yeah, let's not go into Syria. Let's not go into Libya.
Mhm.
And you got a whole dominant conservative populist type movement today that's largely against those forever wars. You have to run on that to win. All the
Mhm.
media outlets echoed that. And then
Mhm.
lo and behold, and then we got the Ukraine and Russia thing. And then some of them
Mhm.
peeled off because their
Mhm.
stupid, ape crazy hatred of Russia because whatever their things are
Mhm.
kicks back in, fires down there. I think anytime you're pro peace and you're a Christian, even if you didn't get there from the right reasons, it's still a win for your conscience. It's still a win
Mhm.
for your spirit that you're going in that direction, even if you
Mhm.
got there from ignorant ways. But then
Mhm.
you see them peel off for various things. Like
Mhm.
the pandemic comes and some of the tough guy, some of the pro peace, loving God view, which is just the view of the Bible,
Mhm.
uh, you know, they didn't get it at first, and they were all for shoving people into forced medications and forced lockdowns. And they slowly kind of woke up when it was too late, usually, but they slowly woke up and kind of came back to their human decency. But then
Mhm.
when the Ukraine Russia thing, some of them went ape crazy again. Kill the Russians, kill the Russians, like Lindsey Graham says. Kill them, kill them, kill them, kill them. Just kill
Mhm.
everybody. Why? The TV tells me kill them. I don't know anything
Mhm.
about it. Just kill people. That's
Mhm.
that's demonic, man. You want to find the Antichrist? It's in the mirror. Look in the mirror. That's You
Mhm.
want to kill people you don't even know. You just want to see them blown apart.
Mhm.
Because the television told you
Mhm.
so. You're the Antichrist.
Mhm.
You're the Antichrist. So then the next one is then you go to, because that's what the Antichrist is. Looks like Christ, but acts like the devil. That's what you do.
Mhm.
Every day you go to church, you do your do 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 do, and then you go
Mhm.
and say kill the Russians. Now, if you
Right.
go the other side, you're just as stupid, saying it's all Russia. Putin is my hero. Putin is my hero. Okay, if that's
Mhm.
what you want, that's fine. You go to prison for 5 years when you say one wrong thing about Putin, and I'll see you at the gulag in the Soviet Union. I mean, so don't idolize anything. Don't be stupid about any of
Right.
this. But we can't. That's
Right.
the problem with this stuff. But okay,
Mhm.
so let's go to the next one. So then they figured out the Ukraine thing was a Ponzi scheme. Now we're on to Israel, Gaza. And
Right.
some of the great conservatives that woke up about the stupidity of Ukraine, Russia, more of them more pile on to stupidity for this issue.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you just get stupid after stupid. It's like different challenges, and so many
Mhm.
people lose their faith.
Mhm.
They lose
Yep.
their faith because the allure of violent zeal is
Mhm.
intoxicating.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I also think it's more than just the zeal. I think it's also they are engulfed in like you see your neighbor and they say, well, my
Yeah.
neighbor's getting in on it. This person's getting
Yeah.
in on it. So you start to become it's almost like sometimes you're not
It's
even
like a sports
aware that
team.
yeah, like you're not even aware that you're doing it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Let's go.
And
Let's go Eagles. Let's go Cowboys. It's like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a stupid reptilian part of your brain.
Right.
You
And
know?
I admit, I'm an Eagles fan. You know what I mean?
Oh, is
And
that
I
what you
get
got on right there? Do
no,
you really?
no.
Oh, I thought you had some
But
kind
I
of.
but I am I am an Eagles fan.
I
And
didn't
I,
know that. I just randomly made that up. Okay, cool. I
well,
stepped on your toes already. Good. We got to get something right.
hey man, they're 10-1,
Yeah.
But hey, so I can understand, and everyone gets caught up in or gets drawn into some form of mimetic contagion, whether we,
Yeah.
you know,
And there's
and
not
so
all of them are bad.
no, it's not. Yeah,
It's
it's
not
not.
all
It's
bad.
not.
But when your
Yeah.
memetic contagion is literally accelerating the destruction of all last vestiges of wealth in your
Mhm.
country standing on the global stage, and
Yeah.
you're literally cheering on the murder of children,
Hmm.
That's not a little mimetic contagion. That's
Yeah,
not
no,
getting in the mimetic
yeah.
contagion of Elvis Presley. That's getting into the mimetic contagion of the worst thing on earth, which is evil, is sin. That's the worst thing, murder.
Yeah.
That's the rejection of your, so, and the problem that I have is that even in this conflict, those who see through the mimetic contagion on both sides of this issue, they still reserve. I mean, this is the thing that irritates me a lot, right? Is that the folks who see through the lies of the Ukraine-Russia war, they see through the lies of the Libya war, the Iraq war, the Syria war, the Arab Spring. Okay, that's such a small subsection of people who truly understand all those things for what they really are. And then they see through the lies on both sides of this issue. So they've made it through the gauntlet of lies. And then you ask them about, their view, of God. And I mean, you don't have to ask them. It just comes out that they fantasize about having a little Caesar takeover, and throwing everybody in the prison and like arresting all of the left. And they're fantasizing about, do not resist evil doesn't mean pacifism.
Right.
I'm not a pacifist, but that's what their stupid, that's how they try to like mock the message of peace, is to always call it pacifism.
Yeah.
And so, but they always put a caveat. Like, what I'm trying to get at is that even if you get through all those different psychological lies and mistakes that our establishment in America has pushed, you find out that the subset of people in the faith who are still with you very much hold on to a very violent, perverted view of Jesus. And when you see that, it's depressing as hell, because you're like, there's no, it's discouraging when you see it, because you're like, holy shnikes, you really don't get it. And then you find those one group, then you go to another group that's very anti-war, and they see it, and they have a very peaceful view of Jesus, but they're dumb in their politics. They're like, they vote for everybody that ever went to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and they're gleeful to do it still. And you're like, what? So you got the progressive dumb, stupidity too, right? Where they just vote for, oh yeah, Jesus is nonviolent, but I have to vote for Hillary Clinton, because she just got back from Jeffrey Epstein's island, and she knows what to do to fix the problem of universal health care. She figured it out on the Epstein's island after they had session number 52 doing whatever the hell they do there. She figured it out, and she's going to bring, universal health care, and she's going to take care of women after she just left Jeffrey Epstein's island with their red shoes and all that crap they're doing with like the little kids. But she's going to take care of women. She's a strong woman, like I want to be. Like, if you're that, and then you teach your nonviolent Jesus, again, you're just as stupid, just as stupid as these trad whatevers talking about, when the church gets in power, we're going to ban anybody who says anything blasphemous about the Lord. It's like, it's stupid people, man. You just you lust after violence. You lust.
Right.
It's just a bunch of brats that want boundaries. That's what they want. They want boundaries. They need a good old fashioned backhand in real life to get it out of their system.
Don't be violent, David. No, what they want, I think truly is they want retribution. they want retribution.
For what? Because they were brats growing up. They want retribution for being spoiled.
Because they feel like it's their turn, right?
So
I got slighted for 4 years, so now the next 4 years I'm gonna do everything that you did to me.
Who?
Right?
What are you talking about? Like, you talking about the presidential stuff or what?
Yeah, the presidential stuff, the policies, everything. It's like, well, what you did to me, you shut me down. You made me feel like, I was the worst. You made the public feel like I was the worst person on the planet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That will harbor some, you will harbor a little bit of resentment towards those
sure.
people.
I'm not telling you can't harbor something or feel something. I'm just saying the basic line, if you read the Bible, is to let go of the sacrificial violence and the tit for tat stuff. And if you don't get that right, you didn't get the Bible. Period. You didn't get it. It just didn't get it right.
Really, how many people are actually who say that they're Christian, how many of them really do that? Like, how many people say on the right or on the left say, you know what? Hey, I forgive you, man. Now
Yeah.
let's move on and
Yeah.
actually do something for the benefit of our country.
And how many people who are converting to Christianity, especially to these traditional movements or the new movements, are in love with the church that they're buying into more than they are with Jesus? That's the problem. And I've told that to people, and they say, no, I love the church and everything about it because of what it is for Jesus. I'm like, okay, but you spend more time talking about your church in distinction from its rivals than you ever talk about the distinction of Christ, which is to let go of the renunciation of tit for tat and judging your neighbor and judging the speck in their eye for the plank in your eye. You've missed all of it. You know, you've missed all of it. If you like your tradition the most, you should spend your time talking about how awesome the other traditions are and how you want to bring them into fellowship with you. You shouldn't be talking about how you're better than them. That's dumb. That's a spirit that you don't know what you're speaking. Your spirit is not of Christ when you spend more time talking about your distinctives in your tribe as a stand-in for your superiority to others around you. That's not Christian.
Yeah, it's sort of like a pseudo ethnicity or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or a nationalism.
Yeah. And it reveals itself to be a stand-in for violence because that's the spirit of violence. The thing about the like non-reciprocity of like everything about turn the other cheek, do not resist evil. When they take your coat, give them your tunic too. All of those things are about stopping the reciprocity of rivalry. Because Jesus knew that when he deprived the world of the scapegoat mechanism, you would have to learn these principles really hard to stop the apocalypse from unfolding in your life and in your relationships and in your churches and in your neighborhoods. This is what we should be talking about. There's nothing else more important than this. There's nothing else more important than stopping and learning every day how to stop talking about, how to stop the process of reciprocal egoism, reciprocal partisanship, reciprocal, justification of oneself in a way of marginalizing somebody else. All of that is the hard daily work of being a Christian. And when you get that right on your personal, and you at least know how it works. I think that it helps inform you about the frivolity of it at the big scale when you say, well, let them kill 10,000 Gazans and then that'll be enough, or let them kill 70,000 and that'll be enough for the thousands that they killed unjustly. No. If you can get that right when you start learning how to catch the reciprocity of rudeness in your own life. And in your own way of talking about church, right? Nobody talks about this, though. I don't hear anybody preaching about this because I don't know why. I guess it's not fun,
Well, again, I think it's not that it's not fun. I think that it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's difficult, right? It's difficult to turn the other cheek, man. It's difficult to see the sort of frailties that we are as human beings have.
But why
to sort of lead into that. You know what I'm saying?
You know why it's so difficult? Because nobody's taught to do it. So there's no practice.
Right.
If we would do it, it's like a chicken or the egg. It's so difficult to forgive or, reciprocally, look past another slight, right? That's so difficult. Yes, it is difficult in and of itself. But it's even way more difficult when nobody even talks about that as the core meaning of being a Christian.
Well, yeah, I think it's difficult when nobody is willing to actually act it out. You know what I'm saying?
But they don't even talk about it.
Yeah, well, but the thing is that if you're gonna, you talk about Jesus and his actions, right? Like, what did he do? He which I'm sorry, man, but that is a even if you say you talk about it, like, okay, when people talk about it, they say, yeah, that's all good. Yeah, I believe in that. Like, peace.
And then when you say, hey, we should have a peace between Israel and Palestine, they say, no.
Yeah,
kill 100,000 Gazan children. Why?
Yeah.
Because Amalek.
Right.
See what I mean? So you worship Amalek when your witness is called. You want to talk about, that's what I'm saying, being ashamed of the gospel. That's what it
Yeah,
looks like. That's being
yeah,
ashamed of the gospel.
yeah.
You know what's being ashamed of the gospel? Rejecting the lies about the Middle Eastern wars, all of them, and then
Mhm.
saying, when the church people get in power, we got to have blasphemy laws. That means you're ashamed of the gospel. That
Mhm.
means you're absolutely ashamed of the gospel because you don't believe in the power of Christ and what he told you to do. You believe you can take your little Caesar idolatry, put Jesus stickers on top of it, and say
Yeah,
that you're doing Christian governance. No, you're
yeah.
ashamed of the gospel.
Mhm.
If you want to put people in a rape cage because they said a blasphemous statement, you didn't understand what Christ was doing. You didn't read
Mhm.
Jesus. You didn't let Jesus read you. You don't have a relationship with the Holy Spirit in that way. Maybe, again, at the same time, I'm not judging. I'm not saying you're going to be in trouble or whatever about
Yeah.
the eternal destination, whatever. I'm just saying you're not living the fruit of the spirit, my friend. If you know what I mean. For all those
Yeah.
trad people who want their little Caesars $5 pizza governance, if they want that, what are you going to do when you realize that you've been spitting in the face of Christ all along to get that? What you really want,
Right.
you want to subdue your enemies. You're jealous. You're angry.
Mhm.
You're mimicking your neighbor, which means when you want to pass a blasphemy law or something like that, you're
Mhm.
mimicking your neighbor's idols. You're
Mhm.
idolizing your neighbor. You're making
Mhm.
your neighbor's violence your governing principle rather than the commands
Mhm.
of Christ. So you're
Yeah.
not really a
Yeah.
Christian. You're not a Christian.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say you're not a
You're
Christian.
not a Christian.
I would say you're not acting in the ways of Christ.
But
The
you're not a
thing
Christian
is,
in terms of the relationship between you and your neighbor. If that's your witness, if that's your relationship with him, there's the reason why nobody follow. See, when I say Christian, I'm not talking about your eternal salvation. I'm talking about what is it? What does the word Christian mean? It means to be an imitator of Jesus.
right. So
So
you're
if you're
saying you're
not
not
imitating
imitating
Jesus,
Christ. Yeah.
every
Okay.
day you meet your neighbor, whether he's a liberal or
Yeah.
whatever, neocon, if your voice is for retribution,
Hmm.
and that's what they know you by, then they don't know you by the imitation of Christ, which means
Yeah.
you socially are not a Christian.
Yeah. You're not
I'm not
following
indicting
Christ.
your eternal soul. I'm
Yeah.
indicting your relationship to one another that you are not a Christian as it relates to your neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's call it
This
like it
is
is, like I don't
yeah.
care what church you're part of, if you're using your voice to push for reciprocal violence
Hmm.
and using force
Hmm.
to get revenge on the evildoers,
Hmm.
that is a sign that your heart is in love with murder, and it's a
Yeah.
sign that you're worshiping your neighbor who is your rival there, and that's a
Hmm.
sign that you're not imitating Christ and you're going in the
Yeah.
wrong direction of your life, and therefore that's a
Yeah.
reason why nobody wants to be Christian, is because there's too many people doing that.
Yeah, and of course, I think there are other components to that other than just the violence and the wars, right? There's many many other reasons why people, sort of maybe don't feel like they want to be Christian. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know. They feel ostracized.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they're welcome into the church or whatever. And that has its own. I don't even know how to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. I'm glad I'm not a theologian because I don't have to make the call. I don't have to make a cause for this, but it's good to think about. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's good to think about. But I do. I also am. I'm also aware of people's frailties, and I sympathize with them when they because they want to do what's right and they want to follow Christ, whatever, but they get swept up into the what is that thing called, the Colosseum. you know they want to watch the gladiators. You know what I mean? And that becomes a very euphoric, and cathartic like experience for people. It goes back to that, and I think that's what um, you know people on a daily basis, like when we talk about working towards our salvation and stuff. have to be conscious of, or they have to work towards being aware of, on a daily basis when they're trying to practice their faith, like, you know, am I participating in this scapegoating? Am I participating in this violence, these violent acts? You know, um, you know, am I participating in, just, well, hell, not following Christ, not being Christ-like, and you know, we all fall, I think, prey to that sometimes, and that's something we have to, for me, man, I just say, mea culpa, through my own fault, you know what I'm saying? Through my
Yeah.
own grievous fault. And um, because I don't think these people are inherently evil people or bad people. I just think they don't, in the moment, they're not using good judgment. They're
Well, I
not
think
using
it
good
goes
judgment.
hand in hand with the I think the violent stuff that they have is essential for understanding why people don't want to follow Christ, is because the violence retards the society from being able to find nonviolent solutions. You
Hmm.
know, like the
Yeah.
nonviolent solutions are 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 not found because people are fixated by the aura of of all this sacrificial violence we see around us.
Hmm.
Like people
Hmm.
don't want to go into curing diseases or believing they can cure diseases. They don't want to believe they can cure pollution. They don't want to believe that they can do all these great things like we talked about over the years.
Hmm.
um, they don't want to believe that because they're too busy mesmerized by the allure of the sacrificial violence around us.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
So
they're
when they're when they're
fixated
when
by
they're
the
sucked
drama.
up in yeah when they're sucked up to another foreign conflict that they like,
Hmm.
that's sucking up their energy
Hmm.
instead of letting that find a nonviolent outlet for their energy.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I would say, you know, I mean, Gerard said that, human beings like drama, and we're fixated on a dramatic,
Yeah.
you know, scene that seems to be very,
But there, yeah.
it helps us, maybe it helps us relieve
Yeah.
us of our own uh
But can you imagine how
personal
much
dramas
drama
that
there
we go
was? I mean, read the biography of the Wright brothers
through. Yeah.
to try to get that flying machine off the ground. I mean, they bet
Hmm.
everything they had from their money running a bike shop
Hmm.
to get that thing off the ground, literally.
Hmm.
You know, is that
Hmm.
probably where we got that saying, "Get that off the ground"? It's probably from
Yeah.
them, from that.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe not. But the point is like there's a lot of drama around that. So
Hmm.
I don't understand why, you know, like why, uh, if you need to have drama,
Hmm.
you know, I guess go, get into sports,
Hmm.
or if you want to watch, something more violent, martial arts or
Hmm.
MMA or wrestling,
Hmm.
something to let that get out of your system, and then go wake up the next day and get out there with the Wright brothers and start working on making that machine fly, and deal with
Hmm.
the drama of that. Deal
Yeah.
with the drama of coming home every day saying, "Are you still working with that flying machine, guys? There's no money in that. I need you to get back to making bikes, or we're going to lose this house." That's drama.
That's,
You got plenty of drama in doing good things.
hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have plenty of drama there. If you want your drama, you're going to have plenty of it, and there's going to be plenty for others to vicariously watch. The lazy ones that
Yeah.
will not do anything.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you're going to have plenty of drama without bombing kids. That's like
Hmm.
Satan. You know,
Hmm.
I don't. I get what you're saying. I don't want to like
Hmm.
totally, but it's like it's just so dumb to be like, well, the only way we can get our drama fixed is like, you know,
Well,
locking
I mean,
people up,
it's
beating
yeah,
people in the streets, arresting our
yeah,
opponents, or murdering children in wars. Like what? That doesn't have to. Like, there's a lot of other ways we could
yeah,
do that.
sure,
We
yeah,
got a
and
lot
I
of
and I
drama.
agree with that. I'm not saying that that's not, there aren't other ways to,
Yeah,
I guess, mediate that drama, but that is what, okay. What I'm saying is that people get fixated on the fact that somebody says, okay, we're going to war.
Yeah.
That, that does sort of heighten people's senses.
Yeah.
And what do they start doing? They're looking in their phone to see how many times so and so said, and then they want to know the next hour is, what did they drop a bomb, and they want to know the next hour. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
then what happens? We're all
Sick.
talking
Yeah.
about it for a whole month, and
But we're going to have
there's
to get over that. Here's my point.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
take all the moral questions out of this.
mm-hmm,
We're going to have to get over it really quick for pragmatic reasons because it's all coming down. It's all falling
mm-hmm,
apart.
mm-hmm,
The noise and chaos of the media environment, the decentralized networks of social media contagions, and
mm-hmm,
the inability for war propaganda to stick and bind people together as well as it used to is accelerating. That disintegration of war propaganda's effect in creating unanimous consensus for the public is quickly, in our own eyes and watching in real time, disintegrating.
mm-hmm,
So as it disintegrates, we're going to disintegrate among each other, and we're
mm-hmm,
going to go into a state of dark, really horrible, too much drama zone. Everybody's going to want to put a stop to the drama. So I'm saying, let's pragmatically all agree to stop with the reciprocity blindness, the blindness to the reciprocity that we have, and the blindness to the reciprocity and impotence of the sacrificial drama, violent plays that we're watching. And let's pragmatically steer ourselves towards crazy ideas. You got a crazy idea? Go do it. If you're scared to do it, and you don't feel like you have the knowledge, know-how, build a team around you to help you do it, and then do it with them. Do something wild. Do something wild. Figure out how anti-gravity works. Don't wait for the aliens to give it to us, whoever those are. Because they're not sharing. They haven't shared yet. They're not going to be sharing without having a hard time to get there. I like what Tim Burchett said this. He's a Republican from Tennessee, right? He's been one of the biggest proponents in Congress for disclosing what's the truth about these UFOs, right? And he's convinced they're from the other world. This is a guy, he's an old Republican Christian guy. I don't know how he fits that into his worldview, but publicly he says he thinks there's something there. And he said something recently in a press conference. I liked it because Tucker Carlson clipped it when he interviewed him this week. He said he had a press conference. He said, can you imagine, folks, if they have those types of UFOs flying around and you're talking no heat trace, you're talking energy you can move around without any heat trail. He said the war pigs do not want that technology out there. And I thought, I'm proud that a Congress, he said, I misspoke. I meant to say
warmongers.
No, war pimps. He said, I meant to say war pimps. Okay. But I think war pigs fits just as well, if not better. The war pigs were squealing at the thought, he says, that people get a hold of this technology, because he said, not ain't going to have our boys fighting for wars anymore. You know what I'm saying? So that right there is the most interesting thing I've ever heard a congressperson say, maybe forever, because that's so interesting that a guy who's elected Congress, now he might be whatever, he might be misled or confused. I don't know. But he's seen something enough that he's classified, that's classified. He can't say what it is, but he keeps saying they need to disclose it. And he keeps saying that if this technology was out, we wouldn't be able to send our boys to war for oil and stuff like this anymore. And I just started thinking, that's what I'm talking about. Sounded like he quoted from the hymn book of what we've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that definitely put the military out of business.
And a lot of other things too with it. In a good way, in a bad way, There's some good and bad with every technology. We got to always admit it puts the horse and buggy guys out of business. But, that's what I think we should be. So the question is, do you wait? See, that's the thing. Okay, it's one thing to say them aliens got something that will put the war pigs out of business. But I'm saying don't wait for them aliens or whatever they are to give it to us. Go make it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So that's here's to anti-gravity discs, and that's what we should be wanting to make. Don't wait around for the ET to share it. He ain't gonna share it. If he wanted to share, he would have shared it with you a long time ago. Whoever ET is, if it's a military contractor or whatever, they've got something good, and hardly anybody wants to share it. So you're going to have to make it yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll toast to that. You know what I'm saying? I don't got a glass, but I'll toast to that.
And you look like one of those guys, by the way you're dressed right now, that get abducted by them UFOs. Just to say, so be careful on your way on your jog tonight, okay? After what I
Yeah,
just told you, I
I'll have
called
you.
somebody out. So if it's Men in Black or UFO or whoever,
I'll have you on speed dial. You
well,
on speed dial.
they say they don't remember where they were. They were, it's as if they just woke up in a car. So when you're jogging tonight, if you see a bright light in the trees, you just run on back home, okay?
I'll run as fast as I can.
Yeah. You want to talk about bright news? There's your bright news for you. There was a bright light, and Shannon and Alpha. They always look like that on Unsolved Mysteries. Every guy who gets abducted has a hat on like that and a jacket like that, and they're always like hunters or fishers.
They must be that must be a prevalent thing in the Northwest.
Yeah, and that and Bigfoot. So be careful. All right, brother. That's it for Things Hidden, and I appreciate your time. Check out brightnews.com to see Shannon's curation of the news and his podcasts and so forth. And we'll talk again soon, Shannon.
All right, brother.
And email me hello@aneighborschoice.com if you want to stay in touch or, report Shannon's whereabouts if he goes missing. I'm worried about him after I saw that outfit and I saw this. So hello@aneighborschoice.com. Give us a shout out and we'll talk to you soon.